Hello everyone, this is a video for Module 8, just an overview of what we'll learn in the 2 chapters. You're going to read a chapter that's about the Gothic style, which is kind of starts in France and then branches off to Northern and Western Europe. And then we will look at 13th and 14th century Italy, which at this time Italy is made or is kind of divided up into small city-states, and we'll look at the pre-Renaissance art. So sometimes this time period is called the International Gothic style, or it's just called the pre-Renaissance, and it's all the art that comes before Donatello, because Donatello is often considered like the first true Renaissance artist. So in your book, chapter I think it's chapter 11 is chapter 12 is Gothic art, and Gothic art has a very specific start to it. You have Abbot Suger. It's kind of spelled like Abbot Sugar, but he's French, so it's pronounced Suger, and he starts the Church of Saint Denis, and in it he tries to create heavenly spaces by enlarging the ceiling, so making it larger. He uses barrel vaults, which have these kind of ribbed vaults, which we'll see in this image right here. This is the interior view of Saint Denis, and you see this ribbed portion right here on these vaults. That is a uniquely Gothic attribute. Okay, so if you're ever traveling Europe and you're in a building and it looks like bones on the inside, that's something that's very much a Gothic style. So that's called a ribbed vault in these barrel vaults here. And then the other thing that's characteristic of Gothic style is, if you look at this window, we can see something that's very particular to the Gothic era, which is stained glass windows, which are small pieces of glass that are attached through a lead substrate that kind of holds it together, and they're planned out very carefully and usually follow a very particular theme. So they have that mural quality that's similar to the mosaics that we saw in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century. You're trying to communicate ideas from sacred texts. You have a lot of iconography and stories from the Bible. But the purpose of the stained glass is to create a sense of colorful light that comes into the building and kind of dances around and floats around. So I may have talked about this before, but these churches, they're trying to create a spiritual space. And one way they do that is by manipulating the environment. And if you ever travel through Europe, one thing that you'll be struck by when you go into these churches is the quality of the light inside the buildings is very different than what you experience in any typical type of building, because the stained glass windows, the windows are kind of a little wavy, and they're all these different colors, and that light comes in and it kind of floods around and floats around the space, and it creates this kind of neat effect, if you will, right? It's very calming and unearthly, and just kind of neat. Okay, and so that's one of the really cool things about a Gothic building is the quality of light created by the stained glass windows. The, the other two attributes of Gothic style architecture are the Gothic Arch, which is basically a Roman arch that has a point at the top, and you kind of see it here in this window, Saint Denis. And then if we take a look at Notre Dame right here, which is in Paris, here we have the big rose window. This is, a huge giant stained glass window. But look at these braces on the outside. These are flying buttresses, and that's the other attribute that you will see on a Gothic style architecture is braces that come outside of the building, and the purpose is to support the massive walls. When you're creating a building, it's made out of stone, and it's huge, it's massive, it's has it's taller than any building that has been built before in this time period. There's the tendency of these things to fall down, so they had to create engineering solutions to hold up the walls. Plus, you have half of the walls are filled with glass. So, in order to support these huge, massive structures, they had to put, kind of these big braces on the outside, and those are called the flying buttresses, which we see right here. All right, so you're going to read about Gothic style architecture. You'll read about Saint Denis. You'll read about Chartres Cathedral, Reims Cathedral, Notre Dame, and then how Gothic style spreads. The term Gothic itself was a kind of a put down. It came much later than when the style was being developed. I mean, a better name would just be French style architecture from 11 to 1300, right? But much later, people started calling it Gothic as a way to kind of put it down, calling it heavy and massive and bulky. But for whatever reason, the term stuck. And so now we know the term Gothic as French architecture from 11 to 1300. Okay, then the next quiz that you will have in Module 8 will cover the pre-Renaissance, and that's the time period, just before the Renaissance, where you have some slight changes in painting and changes in sculptural forms. And one of the best examples of that is the Scrovegni or Arena Chapel that's in Padua, Italy, and it showcases the work of Giotto. And that's what we're looking at here. This is the work of Giotto. This is an interior view of the Scrovegni Chapel. Scrovegni was a family who lived in Padua. They were a banking family, and they had their own private chapel. And there's a whole story about Dante, writing about the Scrovegni family, saying that they were in one of the lowest layers of a hell, right? And one of the sons read this and felt bad and wanted to make atonement for maybe the sins of the family, so he had this chapel built, and he had the best artist of that particular time, Giotto, come and design it and paint everything. So what's interesting about this space, and I've been here, is that it's completely surrounded, or every single part of it is this artist, Giotto. You're immersed in the environment of Giotto. And he puts the virtues and vices of humanity. He puts the Passion of Christ on this bottom panel. And then he has the scene of the Last Judgment on the back here. So you see Christ, you see the apostles on the side, and then you see the righteous and the damned on the other side. What's unique about Giotto's painting is he starts to break away from Byzantine style painting techniques and stylistic tendencies of flattened space and floating characters. He begins to experiment with layering and more realistic proportions. There's still some holdovers to Gothic style painting, which is where we have all these halos on the righteous, and then the damned don't have halos, right? But you see a sense of shadow and shading in the characters, and you'll also see, especially on the side panel paintings, people are layered in a more natural way. This is a fresco type painting as well, and this becomes a major influence for Michelangelo when he does the Sistine Chapel. There's a Last Judgment on the back of the Sistine Chapel, and on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, he studied Giotto's work in Padua as a reference, as an inspiration. All right, so this chapter you're going to learn about how it's a transitional time period. Art is drastically changing and heading towards the Renaissance, and I believe this is the last chapter in your book. If you have any questions or problems as you're completing the online quizzes, just let me know. Every once in a while we get some wonkiness in terms of questions don't align with the textbook. 99% of the time they should work out, but every once in a while there's a technical thing, or I've inputted the wrong answer key. I make mistakes too. Just let me know and I can fix those, because I want to know, because I want it to work. I want it to all align up, and I don't know unless I get feedback. Everyone's doing pretty good. Thank you for completing the online quizzes, and take a look at the final project if you get a chance. As usual, email me at conm@iecc.edu. Thank you. Have a good day.